we
This
can get going. I
conference will
don't
now
see,
be recorded.
we've got Steve, Nancy, Norma. Okay. I don't see Jeremy here yet, but he might call in. Okay. Thanks everybody for getting together this morning for this session. And we'll turn this meeting over to Tina to talk us through this tentative budget that she has prepared for us. Okay. So Tina, if you want to get started and tell us where to be looking, that'll be good.
Okay. I think what I'll do is literally walk you through the first couple pages to start with. The first page, you might look familiar to probably at least to Nancy and Michelle because you've been through this with us a couple times now, but this first page is capturing information from the budget. It's telling us right now the total appropriations that we have built into the budget. It's bringing in the revenues, and if any appropriated fund balance is needed to balance the budget, it's bringing that number in too, and that's what you see highlighted in yellow right now. The reason that it's very early to really be looking at this particular page, but I wanted to at least draw your attention to, as we make changes, these numbers will change. But down below, the top portion where it's sort of estimating the budget for us is the tax rate information. And so under the FYE 2021 titles, you have the assessed valuation from last year and the tax rate that was adopted and applied. I have calculated the tax cap, and this year the village, the allowable taxable levy limit for the village is $1,425,800, which is roughly about it's about $26,700 more than we could levy last year. The tax cap calculation, as you might recall, the law allows you to levy up to 2%, but it's or whatever the current levy limit is. This year, we're only allowed to levy, it's less than 2%, it's 1.013. So in this tentative budget that I have prepared for you, I have put in the allowable levy limit, which basically means as it's being presented today, you are not over the tax cap. You are just using the amount that you're legally allowed to levy, which is less than a 1.5% increase. Any questions about this first page before I move on to the second page?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay. The second page is a current report of the fund balance. So, we've been talking a lot over the last couple of years that we need to get the general fund balance up to a healthy balance. We did adopt a fund balance policy, and in our fund balance policy, the minimum goal is to get our unassigned fund balance at least 25% of the ensuing year's budget. So our goal is to try and get our unassigned fund balance up to around $500,000. In the column that says unassigned fund balance, you can see where the fund balance, where we were at the end of 2020, which is basically your fiscal year is 5/31/2020. So our unassigned fund balance is $328,000. I am projecting, and of course this is all these are strictly estimates, but because revenues came in stronger than we had thought, and we did cut a lot of expenditures, and everybody really walked the line this year. I'm projecting that we should be able to add potentially another couple $100,000 to our fund balance by the end of this fiscal year, which is May 31st, 2021. So I will review those projections with you to make sure I'm not out of a line on them, but as long as we don't go on some crazy spending sprees, or we don't have any unforeseen expenditures show up that I'm not aware of, we should be able to add to fund balance again this year, and getting us pretty close to our goal for the minimum. We still have a ways to go, but I'm encouraged to see that we are heading in the right direction. So that is what you see listed there, where it says projected for fiscal year ending 2021. And then the first column is just history of the taxes that have been raised. So any questions on that page?
I'm good, Tina.
Okay. All right. Now, basically, this is the next, how many pages is it? One. Pretty much the next 3 pages represent the budget for, or at least what we're going to review together. The first page and then the top of the second page are all the revenues. Followed by that will be the expenditures. So we can start with the revenue page. On the far left-hand side, it sort of gives you a description of the revenue. The first 2 columns represent the actual revenue received in fiscal year 19 and 20. The next column, that is the current budget that we are operating under. The next column is year-to-date actuals. So we populate the budget with actual spending and received revenues. And the report I was using at the time was through December 31st of 20. It gives me sort of something to work off of. And then I have a column called projected fiscal year end 2021. That's where I go through and project where hopefully we end the fiscal year. A lot of the revenue and expenditures in municipalities is cyclical and monies you can count on. So estimating revenues is fairly easy to do. Expenditures can be a little trickier because I don't know there locally. Like I said, what might a department head decide to go and get it closer to your end, but we'll review those together as we go. The column that we'll be focusing on, or that I'm going to be talking you through, will be the column that says preliminary budget FYE 2022. And then the other 2 columns are really just kind of measurements to help you kind of gauge, differences between prior year information and the current year budget that we're putting together. So there's a column called budget versus projection. And then there's a column that's comparing last year's budget to this year's budget. And then lastly, over to the far right, I have a notes column where I've tried to provide you with some information. And obviously, as we work through this, if there's other questions that you have, please just, speak up. I'll just quickly add that the one note you will see frequently is SALLY. And I'd just like to remind you that it's an acronym that stands for same as last year. So if you see that, it just means I'm using the same budget number that we used in the prior year. So you'll see a lot of Sallys in the notes section as we go through it. So right off the top, very first line, real property taxes in the preliminary budget column is the 1,425,800. Again, I did the tax cap calculation, which is actually included in your packet. I believe it is the last page that I've provided you, so you can actually, oh, I'm missing a year. I apologize. The sheet you have cut off my new 2021-22 column. I will have to email that over to you separately. So that's showing you our calculation for last year. I apologize. I'll send that over to you as soon as we're done with the meeting. But the tax cap calculation calculates that the allowable tax limit for this year is 1,425,800. And then, so if you look over to the far right-hand column, that's $27,800 more than what we had in our budget last year. The next couple lines are pilots, one with the Harbor Hotel and the Senior Citizens Complex. Those amounts are driven by your pilot agreements, so they really don't change. Last year was the first year the Thousand Islands Harbor Hotel took a step up. We had been collecting around 15.5, and now we're up to 30, almost 31,000 on that pilot. The column, the next one, that's interest and penalties on real property taxes. That represents folks that pay their property taxes late. That one's kind of always up for debate. I was using the same number we used last year, which was 3,000, and you'll see a big swing from if you look over in the actual column, there's a big swing from 2019 and 2020. I feel like 3,000 is an easy one. I'm not sure exactly. I was actually surprised. I thought this was going to be a year that folks might pay their taxes late, and that was not the case. There was actually very little coming in this year in the line of that. So I think 3,000 is probably a comfortable number to use. The next line under that, though, is your next largest revenue, which is your sales tax. In the body of the email that I sent out last night, I did provide you a year-over-year comparison of how sales tax was received this year compared to last year. And let me pull that up for my own benefit here. So last year, the village received $623,861 in sales tax. The first sales tax payment that came out at the beginning of this fiscal year that we're in was $129,000, which was significantly lower than the prior year by around $21,000. However, the next two sales tax payments that we've received were actually higher than the prior year. Now we know that the state is holding back some money before giving it to the county, and I had thought maybe there would be a way to estimate or understand or see what the reduction in that would be, but it's hard to tell when, even though you've received it, you still made more than the prior year. So I really have no way of gauging that. For purposes of estimating the sales tax revenue your last one that we usually receive, usually in June, I'm currently estimating at $135,000. Last year you received $145,000. I could be underestimating, but again, I have no idea what to expect. if the trend stays up, could you potentially beat last year's? Possibly, but this particular quarter is reflective of, it's after the Christmas season. It's, it's the worst quarter of the year basically. So right now I'm estimating it at 135,000. So under the projected column, I'm estimating us ending around 600,000 for the year. And for the tentative or for the preliminary budget, I've built in 580,000. And again, I don't have a crystal ball, so I have no way of predicting, but it is probably a conservative estimate. But again, I have no way of knowing. And I'm certainly open for discussion or input on that number if you feel it should be higher or lower. I'm open to your input on any of these, obviously. After that, we hit some line items, utilities, grocery receipts. Those are actually trending pretty good this year. So I've got that in the preliminary budget at 17.5, which is what we used last year. The hotel room occupancy tax, I'm using last year's figure, though it came in a little bit higher than we thought this year, which was surprising, considering they were closed for a good portion of the year. Franchise fees, I've got budgeted at 27,000, which is on par with the 2019 actual. 20 came in higher. We used 27,000 in the prior year. I'm estimating maybe 32,000 for this year. Then we hit some departmental income lines. Clerk fees, police fees, public work charges like sidewalks, for instance. That particular line offsets an expenditure line down in the appropriations area. You have a program where residents pay for the materials. So we actually, when they pay for those materials, it comes in against that line item, which offsets the expenditure down below in the appropriations. So it's kind of just really kind of there as an offset. The line item that's called other culture and recreation income, that is where you collect your dock fees, when the cruise ships come in, all that. Now, I definitely will need your input on this. I'm using last year's numbers through these department lines. So you're going to see the 10,000 there. Now, if you look over to the prior year, the two columns that say actuals, pre-COVID, the village would bring in anywhere between $42,000 to $58,000. Right now, for this fiscal year, we've only brought in a little over $10,000, and I don't know your season well enough, but I'm going to guess we won't really gain much more than that for the rest of the season until you open up at the end of May. So I'm definitely open for some feedback. If you think that that should be higher, happy to increase it. That's you sort of feeling out or getting a sense for what you think your season is going to look like this year. I believe we're still waiting to hear on the cruise ship whether that will or will not happen this year. Zoning fees, planning board fees, general services, intergovernment, that's sort of us getting reimbursements from fuel and the justice shared services with the town. Again, I kept all of those flat, basically using the same budget amounts that we used in the prior year. Snow removal services, other governments, we have a contract with the state, so we pretty much get the same amount every year there. So there's really no change there. Staying, again, using last year's numbers for the fines and forfeited bail for the courts. One item that's new is down under sale of equipment. I've got $5,460 there. You will see that that's directly associated with some equipment requests that Terry has made. He's put in a request to purchase a new John Deere tractor mower, and part of that would be offset by doing a trade-in, and that's what's represented here with the $4,500 or the $5,460. If you flip your page, there's a couple more revenue line items there. And the line that says interfund revenues for $57,000, every year the water and sewer funds reimburse the general fund for costs, administrative costs associated with the work that happens by Joanne, or Pam, when we had Pam, and Alicia. Those costs are calculated, and that's what's represented in that $57,000. It's basically half of that comes from sewer and half of that comes from water. The state aid revenue sharing, we've been continuing to get that, so that's built into the budget again. That's formally was your AIM money. Mortgage tax, I'm using last year's figures. Year to date through December was $10,007, and you get two mortgage tax payments a year, so we will be getting more than that this year. So I feel comfortable using $12,000. And then the consolidated highway aid, that information, you do have a carry forward apportionment that Terry had. There was work that was not able to be performed this fiscal year that he's hoping he'll be able to get to this in the next fiscal year. And that number is a direct offset by an expenditure line also down below, so it's a wash. If he does the work and generates the expenditures, it will be offset by the reimbursement requests he puts into the state. So it's one of those items, you should see an identical number down below in the expenditures when we get to there that offsets it. Right now, in that very last line in revenues that I've got highlighted in yellow at $58,487, based on all of the requests that are built into this budget on an appropriation level, right now our revenue is short by $58,487 to cover it. So I've plugged that number in. If we had a healthy fund balance, we could potentially use some of that fund balance to instead of raising taxes or reducing expenditures, you would use some of your fund balance. My same mantra goes from last year. I encourage you do not want to use any portion of your fund balance because we are still trying to get to the minimum fund balance. So I put that there just as a placeholder for you to know that right now, 58,000 is what we are currently either have to cut out of the budget or raise revenue up in the budget to cover it. In the body of my email to you last night, I basically, your wage lines for the most part, there's not much room for negotiating there outside of seasonal help. The wage lines have all been updated to reflect the union contracts. They reflect not only the part of the union contract is also the health benefits that were negotiated. I'm using New York State retirement projections and pensionable earnings reports to determine the benefits for real estate or for New York State retirement. We've received from the county what your apportionment for workers' comp will be. So there's a number of line items in here that are sort of, like I say, not really negotiable, other than reduction of FTEs or discussion on what is appropriate for your seasonal help this year. So if you see same as last year, I'm using last year's numbers, budget numbers again. And I've and in a lot of cases, I'll say where some of these are coming from, like a payroll worksheet. So we've kept the trustees and mayor wages flat. That's historically what has happened there. So I've kept those lines flat. Probably maybe makes the most sense for me to just hit on line items that are slightly different. So if we hop down, for example, to the treasurer personnel line, if there has been a request to look for a full-time person to be in the office with Joanne. And so the increase in that wage line is reflective of that. There is an additional request in the treasurer equipment line for $5,500, and that is to outfit a new computer. The village has kind of been on a rotation schedule for IT equipment, and I feel like it's kind of been buried in a lot of the other lines. I put it out here so it's just more, it's easier to know that there would be an actual computer purchase this year. Then these computers get rotated throughout the department. So probably the new computer will come into the front office, and then it gets shifted out to all the other departments, which includes police, water, sewer, and the DPW departments. Scrolling down further to I would follow down to like buildings contractual expenditures. I know there's lots of questions about what runs through these lines, and so I gave a little bit of an explanation there so that you know what gets spent out of there. There is a request that came through from Terry. There seems to be a propane leak in one of the tanks that is buried near the library. And so he has obtained a couple quotes to have those removed. And so the board will need to look at those and make a decision on what direction you want to go there. Unallocated insurance, that is the liability insurance. That is shared. The water fund and sewer fund pay a portion of that. This is the general funds. I increased it. We have not gotten quotes from the insurance company yet to know, but insurance typically goes up, never goes down. So I put in a little extra there just to make sure that we had it built in until we get confirmation on the quotes for this year. If you go to page 5, you will see some extra categories this year for the police department. Have had some requests to add some additional lines to make it easier for the department head to be able to see the type of expenditures running through the lines. So you're going to see that we've expanded the police lines to include a line for fuel, one for internet and IT and phone, one for training. There is in the police equipment and capital outlay line, the police department has requested a equipment purchases for body cameras, data storage for the footage that comes off the body cameras, as well as a new vehicle. I know a new vehicle has been on the list for a number of years. I put it here before you, just so I put every request that was made is built in here for the board to consider. So that is the $63,000 on the police equipment and capital outlay line. The other category I think I entered. I built back into this budget, I don't know, pre-COVID, I guess, seasonal help. So on the line that says, for instance, parking services, personnel line, you'll notice last year we had a 0 there because we didn't bring back any seasonal help. I went back to the budget prior and pulled some actual numbers from there. And so that $8,356 represents part-time help for parking. Oh, I think I skipped I'm sorry. If you look quickly up top, you'll also notice I added a separate line for the crossing guards, separate from the police budget, and that's the $6,573 that's coming over. Again, just to try and help keep. Sometimes that skews the police department wages, so I've carved that out to have that be a standalone line to make it a little bit easier. If you go down to maintenance of streets, permanent improvement highway equipment capital outlay, that's where you will see the $122,000. That is the amount that's up in the revenue line. That's the work that is intended to be done this year. I put in there truck and street work. Truck should be removed. The truck was actually purchased in this fiscal year. That's actually been, I believe, delivered and paid for, and the reimbursement has been submitted from CHIP. So my description should remove the word truck. This reflects really just street work for the new year. If you look at the maintenance of streets, equipment, and capital outlay, there you're going to see $35,300. And I guess it's a little scrunched up, but I tried to tell you what Terry's requests are. In that amount is a John Deere tractor with mower. Let me get to my paper where I can read it. He's got a new John Deere tractor with mower for $13,800. That would be that $13,800 is what it would be with trade-in. So I think it's obviously $5,400 more than that, but with the trade-in, the cost would be $13,800. We've got a leaf box request for $8,120, snow pusher for $3,550, and then a spreader for $4,400. That's reflected in that amount they're being requested. You will see the sidewalks contractual expenditure down just a little bit there. And you'll notice I've got a comment, homeowner pays for materials. So we budgeted in there $5,000, but we had about $2,500 budgeted up in revenue because part of that expenditure is covered by the homeowner themselves. Below that, I've added a publicity separate line for converting the welcome sign to LEDs. Terry's got a quote to do that for about $5,500. And I guess the neon is very difficult to work with and replace, and the village would certainly see a reduction in utilities costs associated with that conversion. So that request is in there for $5,500. I left the publicity line flat for $47,000 for the chamber and the CLDC utilities welcome sign. The line that says playground and rec centers personnel services, that is there's a little bit of a difference this year because it includes a seasonal, bringing back a seasonal worker. Little bit extra in the playground or rec center to maintain the tire trench park area. Under special rec facility personal services, again, bringing back dock workers, that's represented in that that line item. In the special rec facility equipment and capital outlay, you see $25,000 there. That's an estimate for the roof on the Rotary Park bathroom. I don't know if it's a full replacement or if it's just maintaining the current one, but either way, but that represents some estimates received for that project. There's a new line item in here called library contractual expenditure. And you'll see right now, I'm just using the number from last year, $34,000. The library is doing their own books now. So they maintain their own budget, raise their taxes through the school district. Before, when the library was sort of one of the funds that we tracked, this $34,000 used to be done through an interfund transfer. But now the appropriate way to account for it is library contractual. And so it will have its own contractual line item here. Not really much change there. I'm going to go on to page 6. Again, not really much, very little difference here. I think there's a little bit extra built into the shade tree line for additional tree work that needs to be done. Below, so that's pretty much it for the departmental totals. Now you head into the employee benefits area. Again, this is pretty well dictated by other sources beyond our control. There is and there will be an increase in the New York State retirement this year, based on pensionable wages. Part of what is driving the increase here, there are, because of the timing of New York State, their fiscal year versus our fiscal year, we are actually still paying for some of the folks that were termed last year. So built into this number, the village will actually have to pay about $37,000 for employees that are no longer here. That will be paid out in fiscal year that we're putting our budget for, and then those will fall off. So we will have an initial spike this year, but we would go back down the next year after that, after those pensions are funded. Because we have had a reduction in FTEs, the health insurance will be down. So you'll see that reflected on the health insurance line. But everything else, like I said, it's pretty much dictated. I have updated the debt schedule to reflect our amortization schedules. The one number that could change is the band line. We will be renewing at what level and what amount, I'm not 100% sure yet, on the historic district. But I budgeted what we used last year as a placeholder, and I am expecting to get some final estimates on that in the today or Monday. We do have one payment that will be falling off of the list, and that is we have one last payment on the International plow truck that you'll see down under installment purchase deck. So that goes away. Our last payment will be in June of 2021, and then that will be paid off. And then down below, you will see we have no transfers because we are no longer tracking the transfer to the library down there. we're tracking it as a contractual expenditure up in the regular part of the budget. That pretty much is what's built into the budget at this point. I also provided you on page 7, I updated a schedule that sort of shows you the debt associated with existing debt and then projecting what debt will look like with the DOT improvement project and the READY project, so that you can see what the impact would be from a debt perspective over the next about 10 years. And then, like I said, I'm going to have to send you a replacement page for page 8 for the tax cap calculation. I guess that's about it. I would open this up for conversation amongst the board members, or for me to help answer any questions that I can.
So Tina, if my understanding is correct, we need to cut out $58,000 to balance.
Yes, with the way this currently stands, yes, we either need to reduce expenditures by 58,000, or if you feel like, for example, like I said, that other culture and recreation income, like if you think I've missed the mark on a revenue line, that would also be a way to offset that 58,000. So we've got to either feel like we can really raise that revenue by that 58,000 or reduce expenditures. You typically would want to be more conservative in your revenues. We do not have built into this budget, the goal would be we want our revenues to exceed our expenditures so that we can continue to add to fund balance. So ideally, I would like to probably leave the revenues the way they are and see if there could be a reduction in appropriations. Your two largest revenue generators are sales tax. I mean, pretty much the bulk of your revenue is real estate taxes and sales tax. So unless you want to raise taxes above the tax cap, those really are the mark of your revenue sources that cover the expenditures in your budget on an annual basis.
Well, one area that I've thought about and was the library and the removal of that tank. They have tanks currently that we're renting from Chrisman Fuel. So they have propane and they're warm and everything's working just fine. And my thought was possibly instead of spending the 11,000 this year, that we think about maybe doing it next year. I've spoken with Terry. He says it's not urgent. He said there isn't a lot of propane left in the tank. So it's not as though we're creating a hazard by leaving the tank in the ground. And that's an $11,000 expenditure. So that was a thought that I have.
Okay.
I don't think that's a bad idea.
And another conversation we need to have would be about the docks. Are we going to operate the docks as we did last year? Are we going to increase the docks, et cetera, et cetera? And then are we going to increase the dockage fees? And do we do it this year or do we do it next year or we just not do it at all? I think we should increase dock fees And we may want to wait until we get the Mary Street dock completed with the FEMA and Ready Grant project, and then give it a good boost next year. Because I personally believe next year we'll see the Canadian border will open up in 2022, and it'll be a boom year for boating next year. Is my thoughts.
That probably would be a good idea to maintain the dock, do the repairs that are necessary, and
So I'll just add, so right now in this budget, again, because I was bringing in pre-COVID information, right now there is about, pre-COVID, you would normally budget around $32,000 for seasonal help to cover the docks. The discussion about raising dock fees, so what I would caution you is you certainly definitely need to feel out whether you want to bring back that level of expenditure if you're not going to have the revenue to cover the expense. So definitely need to get those two pieces aligned so that we don't go backwards, I guess.
And I fully follow and agree with what you're saying. My personal thoughts is I believe the summer is going to be better, but I don't believe we're going to get a large increase from Canadian tourism. We're not hearing much from Trudeau about opening up the border. A lot of people think it's just the United States that has it closed, but a lot's coming from their side, and they're still battling COVID. So personally, I don't think that we're going to see a large increase in Canadian tourism this year, even though politicians are asking for it. I think we'll see Mary Street Dock be about like how it was last year. And then next year would be the boom. It'll be open for sure next year, Canada.
So revenues, it's kind of lumped together, but we've only brought in a little over $10,000 associated with revenues with the docks for the fiscal year that we're in. And this budget is currently proposing bringing back your seasonal workers at $33,000. So would you bring back any seasonal help? Would you go a season again the way, running it the way you did last year? Would you cut it in half and raise fees?
My thought would be to run it like it ran last year, because even though I had lots of objections for how we ran it last year, it did appear to run okay. And I think, again, we're still, funds are low. We need to bring funds up. I wouldn't go back to a full staff for the docks this year, but for the summer of 2022, I would definitely have a huge conversation about that. And I know I was a big one last year that was, I wanted dock workers, but I was wrong, and it appeared that it worked out fairly well for us.
Yeah, there wasn't many complaints as far as dockage goes. It did go fairly smooth, and I would continue with that as well.
if you had to make a change midstream, you could do it.
Yes, I would agree with that statement. Yes.
I honestly think it'll be a little bit better, but we should be conservative.
And I agree with that. Yes, definitely. Yes.
Well, if the consensus from the board would be that you wanted what we did last year, which was not bring back the seasonal help, obviously that would knock 33,000 off of that 54 real fast.
And so that would we would maintain the same. We had what, two people or one person down at Rotary Park, and we didn't have anyone at Mary Street. Is that correct?
That's
Norman?
correct, but I thought this year we were going to try to open up Mary Street Dock. We made some repairs down there to keep it together until the new dock is in.
Well, if we decide to, if we go that direction, would we have a full staff or just a staff such as a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday
Well,
staff?
that I don't know. I mean, I guess we'd have to bring Terry in on that. I don't know what his thoughts are, but I think that he was working towards having that dock open this year. So we'd need somebody down there part of the time anyway. I didn't think we needed 4 last year, and we didn't. We just had the one down at Rotary Park.
Correct. So if our thoughts are again to open up Mary Street, I think we should just do 1 or 1.5 people. I don't think this year we still don't need a 4 people
staff.
down at Mary
Oh,
Street.
I don't think so either. But
Yeah.
do you want to
So
work
we
with
budget-
Terry on that?
Yes, I'd be happy to. I'll get in touch with them shortly. Yes, not a problem. Yep.
Okay, so we'll look for, okay.
So, anybody on the board got any other questions?
Just just on the topic of seasonal help, I'll just throw out there again. Again, not just using pre-COVID figures. I did bring back the parking attendance back at 8,300. We didn't, I believe you didn't put meters up last year, correct?
We didn't, and I'm waiting to hear from Luck Brothers, Chris, just to see what kind of work they're going to be doing downtown before we make a decision if we want to try to maintain parking with a fee. I'm thinking it'll be very similar to what it was last year. The construction won't be as much, but there's still a lot of things going on down there. And maybe we'll just not have the parking monitored for one more season.
Well, yesterday I had a conversation with Todd at DOT, and his comment was he thinks by this, roughly the second week of June, I believe it was June or July, that they would be paving James Street, et cetera, et cetera. So I think your Riverside Drive is going to be in fairly good shape. James Street getting water and sewer. He said the guys were coming back April the 5th, Luck Brothers, and there would be water and sewer put in on James Street, some more manholes, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, then doing the road along with curbs and the sidewalks.
We've got the force main issue too down on the corner of Riverside Drive and Webb. I don't know just
Yes.
how long that'll take to do. Well,
Yes, yes. So is the question being posed, do we run no parking meters this year like we did last year and wait until things are completely opened up, not just open up COVID wise, but open up construction wise? Or do we put the meters up and let everybody deal with it as it is?
Well, if we put the meters up, you've got to hire somebody to monitor them. If we don't have them all up and able to function, we're still paying the guy and not collecting much money.
So your thought is that we would do the same this year as we did last year when
Right,
it comes with the meters.
right.
Okay.
That was my thinking about it.
Yeah. I personally, again, I don't have a big problem with that way of thinking. And James Street is going to be a little chaotic at times in the next few months. So again, I could go along with that way of thinking.
Does anybody,
got-
Alicia, you're on the line here. Have you heard anything about the stimulus money? Yeah, I've heard a couple of different things on how it's going to affect the village, but nothing that's 100%.
I've been watching it pretty closely, considering it's hot off the press. As assumed, it's already changed 100 times. It appears as though the number that was originally put out for the town, which was around a little over 500,000, is actually encompassing the village's amount as well. However, no one is willing to break that out yet. There's a couple different ways that it's come out to say it's going to be calculated, but I wouldn't be comfortable putting my finger on an exact amount, but there will be funds coming. The total of those funds will be distributed in 2 payments. One's supposed to be around 90 days from when everything is finally enacted from the federal government, and the second half will be 12 months from that date. And it's sort of a grant program per se. You have to be able to show that you're using it for eligible uses. And I think that's going to be the hardest part. So what it does specifically say is that it can't be used directly or indirectly to offset tax reductions or delay a tax increase. And it also says it can't be deposited into any pension fund. They want it to show that you're using it to replace revenue that was lost from the public health emergency, assistance to small businesses, households, and nonprofits in the tourism industry or hospitality industry, or investments in water, sewer, and broadband. That's really all we know right now. There's also a provision that allows for premium pay up to $25,000 additional for public employees, for essential workers, but that's not really a good look. So I'm pretty sure not many people are going to use that use of the aid, but it's all very ambiguous still right now. So the best I can say is you should anticipate something, but what that is and what you'll actually be able to use it for is still up in the air.
It's based on the census, right, Alicia?
Not necessarily. So what we're being told right now is that the town's amount is based on 75% of the previous year's budget, but the village's share based on how many your population is out of the town's population. So basically, they've come up with an amount to allocate to the town, and then they're coming up with a calculation as to how to distribute that between the town and the village. But that hasn't been finalized, which is why nobody's willing to give an exact number yet. They're saying your total number probably is this amount, and part of that will go to the village. So that's the best I can give you right now.
Okay, thanks,
Alicia?
Yes.
Your thoughts, or have you read anything? The other night, the mayor of Watertown said they were getting $23 million.
Yeah.
That
So-
seemed incredibly high. And I understand that's Watertown, but
Yeah. So communities with populations over 50,000 are allocated differently. We're called non-entitlement communities under 50,000, and ours is based on what I stated before, a percentage of our previous year budget pre-COVID. So It's really hard to look apples to apples. The city is getting a substantial amount of money, as is the county. They have said that the number for Clayton, and it is out in documentation. I know that Schumer's office released it the other day. It's hovering, I think, just below $520,000. But with that said, what portion of that will be the towns and what portion will be the villages is yet to be determined. Does that make sense, Nancy? Does that answer your question?
Oh, yes, it does. Yes. Thank you very much. Yes.
So I would just interject here. It is quite possible that you would be able to utilize some of those funds towards the revenue replacement of what you lost related to not being able to fully allow for seasonal docking. There'll just have to be some paperwork put together to figure out, what exactly that dollar amount is. And I'm sure there's other areas where you could do the same thing, potentially parking, etc. But from how I've been looking at this from the town's perspective, that revenue replacement, it's going to be very difficult to show that in only that to get to the total dollar amount. I think the village is going to have to think about how else under these eligible uses you might be able to glean the total amount of that funding.
But since we don't know anything specific and it won't even be this summer that we'll receive any of the money.
They're assuming
We
that
probably don't want to really plan on this money.
I would suggest not.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Okay, what about if the board just thinks about all these things? We put together any suggestions that we might have and we'll forward them to Tina, see what she thinks, and then you had thought, Tina, we should get together one more time?
Yes. I thought if this, so you can digest and think through what you have in front of you. I was thinking maybe we could get together. I think I had thrown out there like maybe Friday the 26th. Here's how it works. Any changes that you can put in, we're supposed to have the tentative filed with Joanne by the 20th.
Right.
We can still make changes to the tentative, so we could essentially have a meeting on the 30th or I'm sorry, the 29th or the 30th or Friday the 26th and make changes to that. So the Joanne presents the tentative, we're not supposed to make changes to it until it goes to the public hearing. So ideally, if the board could come to a consensus on some of these issues, I could make the changes and turn it back around to you sometime between now and next Wednesday. I am unavailable 24th, so but we definitely have time and room to make some changes.
Did anybody have any concerns about what new police vehicle?
How long have they had the one they got?
Oh, it's been around a while and it has had some issues though.
Yeah, I talked to Chief Patnaud, and we definitely need an update on the vehicle. That one's getting in pretty rough shape.
I have no problem with getting a new vehicle for all the same above reasons. Yes, that's fine with me.
If it's to the point where it's nickel and diming us right to death, we probably should replace it.
Okay. Anybody got any other questions, concerns?
I don't. I think, Tina, you did a very nice job in explaining, and Friday the 26th works well for me.
What time do you want to do that, Tina?
We could do it at 9 o'clock again, or
9 o'clock
whatever
on the
works best
26th?
for everybody.
Okay.
Sounds perfect. Thank you.
We've met all the scheduled dates for the budget process, and we've had a good meeting today. Think about how we can make this budget work. I mean, the department heads did a great job last year to live within what they had, and we made it work. So we can do it again.
My encouragement would be you stay the course to get through this fiscal year. That there be a commitment to, run a tight ship right to the end, so that we have this opportunity to, add to our fund balance. The budget that you have in front of you, because I've gone less conservative with your sales tax, means there's less opportunity for, so in other words, if we spend everything that's represented here, there is less room for revenues to exceed our expenditures to add to the fund balance in the fiscal year, this budget that's prepared for you today. So I just, we still need to be cautious with our expenditures. Just putting that out there. I know raising taxes is a very sensitive issue. The way it stands right now, this you are essentially increasing taxes, but it's by less. It's only by like 1.5%, and you're staying under the tax cap. So I just put all that out there for food for thought to you.
Are we all set, do you think, folks, for today?
I think so.
Yes, I'm fine. Thank you.
Who was caller 3 and 4? Do we have a?
There's Joe Chrisman here. I don't know what number I am.
Oh, okay. All right. You don't have any comments, Joe? Any questions on what we've got here?
I got the paperwork last night, so give me a couple days to go through it and digest it.
Okay, good. Do we have a caller number 4? Is that Jeremy?
No,
I don't know what number I am.
I don't know. I've got Paul Knox, Steve, and Joe Chrisman, and I've got another caller on the line.
Alan Heberlin.
Okay, thank you. So Jeremy was not here. Okay, thanks. I needed that information. We're good. Do we need anything else? Tina, are you all set?
I'm all set.
Okay, call me if you need anything. Thank you, board members.
Thank you. And I'll
Catch you
speak with
later.
Terry today and get that, and then forward that information on to you, Norma.
Okay, that'll be good. I
Thank
think
you.
if we get all our thoughts together and send them at one time to Tina, that would help her make the change.